I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a double feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's episode entitled Sergiallo, Martino. Characterized by its blend of mystery and suspense and named after the yellow-tinted pages of pulp crime novels from the 20s, the Giallo film materialized from the shadows in the early 1960s with Mario Bava's The Girl Who Knew Too Much. The genre was inspired by Hitchcockian suspense that came before, and in turn would become an inspiration for the future slasher genre. Gialli were incredibly popular, spawning dozens of films from a variety of filmmakers including Dario Argento, Lucio Fulci, and the subject of today's show, Sergio Martino. A young woman is on vacation with her workaholic absentee husband, but with her abusive ex in town, what else is she supposed to do but take a new lover? Her love life is further complicated by a razor blade-wielding serial killer who likes to send her taunting little valentines. Edwidge Fenech, George Hilton, and Conchita Arialdi star in Sergio Martino's 1971 film, The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh. A string of murders sparks a manhunt for a scarf-wearing maniac taking out college co-eds. When a group of students decide to get out of town until the danger dies down, they soon find that they weren't the only ones who needed some time away from the hustle and bustle. Will they survive the vacation, or get discarded like dolls made out of flesh and blood? Susie Kendall, Tina Almont, and Conchita Arialdi find out in Sergio Martino's Torso from 1973. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Let go.
I'll accompany you to your house in my MG. And why not? Nothing unites people like a vice in common.
Don't be such a fool, Jean. What was between us is over. Let me go.
Welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
They were only stupid dolls, Brian. Made of flesh and blood. Only dolls.
Good line. Yeah. Today we are talking about Giallo films. Gialli, from
Gialli,
specifically
plural.
Sergio Martino, who is now in his 90s, possibly.
You got me, yeah.
Yeah, he's
up there.
He's getting up there for sure.
85 years young.
85 years young, yes. We're going to be discussing two of his films today with The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh and Torso. Wardh is from 71 and Torso from 73. And with us today to discuss these films are two very special guests. Jeremy, take it away.
Yeah, so we have a very special episode here with some Sergio Martino films and maybe some of his most influential ones. And since
For sure.
This is our first kind of focus on Giallo, I thought it would be interesting to have Alex Vlahov back on because he's the curator of Only Film Noir. You know, he's a writer, he's a cinephile, and film noir and Giallo have a lot of crossover there, right? I mean, it is sort of a blending of film noir and horror.
For sure.
So welcome, Alex Vlahov.
You know, you go from picking your teeth with twigs to the development of toothpicks, and then you get toothbrushes, and then there's dental hygiene. There's an evolution to everything.
I see. So I was wondering where you're going with that one.
And fake teeth, yeah.
This is what I'm talking. Noir to Giallo, and there's also, don't forget creamy films. We can talk about that too, but the German creamy.
Yeah.
That's why you got all the knives and the gloves. So pleasure to be back. Really, really pleased to be back.
This is why we bring you on, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah. And also today,
In addition to...
because this is a very exciting special episode, we've got a second guest. This is the filmmaker, video store clerk. Yes, those still exist these days. And the host of the podcast, It's Always Halloween, Lucé Tomlin-Brenner. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me. And I must correct you, I'm a video store manager. I run that shit.
Wow, promoted. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So that's a promotion from when we last had you on the show then, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Although this is my third video store management position, I am a professional video store woman. So I've been doing this most of my entire adult life, really since I was 17. So
Wow.
Well, thanks for coming back, and thanks for, again, talking horror with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my professional duty, actually.
It is. Yeah.
So.
It's your day job and your night job.
Yes.
And I think the other fun thing about getting this whole gang together was both of these films screened recently here at the Egyptian, and everyone except myself was able to go and watch them in person, where Sergio Martino showed up. So I'd love to maybe start off chatting about how that night went.
Oh man, it was so fun. Brian and I met at the historic Bordner's bar, where apparently it was a favorite of Robert Mitchum's. Ed Wood was shot there, a bit of LA Confidential. It has Black Dahlia ties, but not as much as the Frolic Room a couple blocks down the way.
Right.
And I don't know, Brian, they had a very generous happy hour.
Yeah, I was gonna say we didn't go in to see Torso was the first movie they showed. We didn't go in there sober by any means, but it was definitely worth it. Definitely the way to go see those movies. But walking in there, the place was packed. It was a sold out show, if I'm correct. And Martino was there, and he was speaking. And even though we don't speak Italian or understand it, the translator that was there was translating some hilarious commentary about the work that he did on these movies, and I thought it was really awesome to hear him. He's so inspiring, and it's good to hear filmmakers talk like that.
She was great. She must have been maybe late 20s to British, if I remember. Maybe
she delivered accent. Jokes on his behalf well. And it was like something the translators sometimes don't do.
Maybe
well.
Maybe he wasn't funny, but
exactly. She was. That was kind of a boring thing. I'm going to twist it. Yeah.
They had like these moments between them too, where they were kind of like giggling, and it was just very electric. One of the first things he said when he walked out on stage was "Yay, cinema!"
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just
that's right.
So
yeah, right. You
endearing.
texted me that. Yeah.
It was just the sweetest thing, and sometimes these old men get trotted out, for special events, or they get their honorary award or whatever, and they're tired or cynical, or they don't know where they are. And, in his 80s, Sergio Martino was so lively. He had stories right at the top of his head. He went all the way back to his personal family's history with cinema and took it all the way up to these films that we watched.
I mean, his whole family was in the business.
Yes, he was incredibly sharp, clearly very passionate, major cinephile, and, loves making films as well. And it was almost like this woman who was her translator, you would think that she was part of the family, you know what I mean? Or that she was there.
Yeah.
It wasn't stilted at all. Mm-hmm. You kind of forgot that you didn't know Italian.
Exactly. I thought I was watching subtitles in real life. You know what I mean? Like it was just
what a great way of saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was so nice because sometimes, he does know a little bit of English, but he was like, it's easier for me to speak Italian. And I thought that it set the tone really nicely because I've never been to Italy. I don't know any people who speak Italian really. And it set the tone to sit there and be immersed in Italian. Like it's one of those languages and countries that I think as a American who hasn't gotten to travel abroad much, it just feels cultured to listen to it. I'm doing something really smart and fancy right now.
It's a beautiful language too.
Speak Italian.
Yeah. It sounds nice and it rolls off their tongues and it sounds like I'm like, oh wow, I wish I could do that. Yeah, but it was really good to see it like that. It felt like, not cheapening out and seeing the dubbed version of one of these, or not one of these are all in English, but anything dubbed, we were seeing the real thing. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. And he seemed surprised that there were so many people there, too.
Yes.
I know.
Notoriously, these films were sort of dumped into American Grindhouse theaters and were sort of thought of as pretty trashy without a lot of depth or meaning.
Poorly criticized, yeah.
Yeah. Appreciated more in Europe than here. And it's just so interesting that he spent a long time being like, well, I'm a failure and nobody likes these films and I'm not going to make things anymore. And he came out and I don't want to put, false memories in my head, but I swear it looked like his eyes were tearing up. He looked very emotionally moved, which I think is also something you don't see a lot from people who have been in the business for so long. And that really touched me. I really appreciate sentimentality and I don't know, being... you should be rewarded for your work, and I don't think you should ever get used to that. feeling, or you should never expect it necessarily, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like,
totally.
And
take it for granted.
I just thought, I just thought it was like so lovely. He seemed like such a normal person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he seemed grateful for the audience. Yeah. I thought my favorite thing that he talked about with, I think in relation to Torso specifically, was that they put in really like just dumb, lurid shots, hoping that the stuff that they really wanted to keep in wouldn't get touched at all, right? But then it meant
Very
like
Scorsese, right?
Yeah, I guess like, like distract the eye, right? Like put it, they'll pay attention to this bullshit, but then, but he's really his elaborate set pieces or the creative moments. There's a big one I'm sure we'll touch on that the audience reacted so loudly to. But then when they all got restored, like later, it's funny because like they're all back in the film, so it like there are a couple parts of the scene where it's like, oh, this is clearly this seems like you put this in there for the censors to be like, okay, this is kind of cool. So it plays together kind of interestingly in that way. But no, I've seen this film only once before. This has been my second time seeing it. I just love this film so much, Torso, and hearing him talk about it. What was that story he told about? A railing, like a track shot, like he developed a rail from a balcony. Do you guys remember that at all?
It was like a rafter or something. So something that was like a big construction piece, right? That he took from a site, and then he built I think a dolly rig or like a sliding rig.
Yeah, like a vertical dolly, like a very like complex constructed mechanism for a shot. And I love that like DIY, motivation.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because a lot of filmmakers who have as much experience as him are not necessarily putting DIY shots together, right? Like you don't hear about that with people who have so many films under their belt already these days. There's sort of this expectation that like you have money, spend money, get the best of the best, and like I do think that DIY kind of motivation shouldn't be something that you lose just because you are getting like more attention,
Totally. I mean, we're only a couple days out from the Oscars, but Godzilla won the FX, and they had a budget of $15 million the year before. Everything Everywhere, and they famously had a very small FX team. The handcrafted. It seems to be, maybe the pendulum swings back and forth. It seems to be been rewarded lately. It's great to see him doing this as well.
I mean, I love when a filmmaker has constraints, right? They seem to pull things out that that make it more enjoyable to watch the film, as opposed to having all the freedom and money in the world, and for some reason it feels vapid or it feels just like empty.
Well, think of John Carpenter when he had to do his reset. He had his studio films like
Prince of Darkness. You mean?
It was like Thing and Big Trouble. Like both Big Trouble were huge bombs. And then it was like, okay, after that he went back to his roots and did Prince of Darkness, They Live, and had to reset from going whatever it was, $30 million studio film to a $3 million film. And he had to kind of get back to the basics type of thing. Yeah.
Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
I just watched Starman for the first time.
Yeah. What'd you think?
It's kind of a Jesus parable, no? Like a little bit. Like I'm reading it like I'm like
resurrection, right? Yeah.
I could have if I was like in church camp in like the 80s, I was like, oh, this one hits so hard. Sorry, not to deviate.
No. Let's talk about church camp.
Still haven't seen the Starman. It's like one glaring.
Is that
right?
I
haven't seen that one either.
Yeah.
That's a big hole for me.
We'll have to do another friendly alien visitation movie. Right?
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I watched you very carefully. Red light, stop. Green light, go. Yellow light, go. Very fast.
Well, you guys want to talk about Giallo?
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start with the basics here.
Well, let's do that. And also, just one more thing on Sergio Martino in particular. These films, I had heard of Torso because it's, cited as being so influential on, American slasher films and things like that. But, a lot of the other Sergio Martino films I hadn't heard of, including The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh, All the Colors of the Dark, Your Vice's Locked Room, and Only I Have the Key, which is a funny... that was a title, but it was also a line from Mrs. Wardh.
It's in the note, yeah.
It was one of the notes. And the person who introduced me to that was our video store manager here, Lucé.
Hey,
all right.
So happy I could do that for you. Yeah, I actually got really into Giallo like in the last 10 years. It wasn't something that I had really, like I liked Suspiria, I've seen a couple of Dario Argento films, but I hadn't really been grasped by it until I saw Torso. And I was like thinking it was, again, going to be just like this cheap kind of grindhouse film. And then the artistry of it and the glamour of it, I was just completely blown away by it. And then I was like, oh, I want to watch all of his films. And I like watched them all in like a week or two. We didn't have a section for him at Videotheque. And I told the owner, I was like, we need this section immediately. Because we have a whole horror, like an Italian horror section. And so I'm like, he needs to be up there with, Fulci and Argento. And then I just have been recommending it to people ever since and watching, more stuff from that time period. But he remains my favorite. I think there's like a consistency to his films, and I really like the way that they're all kind of a study of like female psyche and sexuality.
And they're very like sex positive,
yes,
which is unlike maybe Argento stuff. And I think that, that kind of falls in your wheelhouse as well, right?
Absolutely. Well, I would argue, and I don't, I try to do a little bit of like looking up on this stuff, and I didn't find anything specifically, but a lot of these Italian directors at this time were like leftists and anarchists and like, had a feminist kind of sensibility to them. And I do think that Sergio Martino's work, especially Torso, is sort of grounded in this feminist idea of like men are dangerous to women and that like women are being objectified and like, but there are these scenes in Torso where it's like every single man in that movie could be the killer and the women are being looked at constantly. And I think that it's it was such a cool choice. And it's just something, there's like an acknowledgement there that like women in the public space are objectified and they're in danger. And like, I don't think that you can make some of those shots and present that sort of fear in the daylight unless you are aware of those issues that women face then and still now.
They're being leered at through so much of the film. And that's like common for Giallo, but in this, it's like there's at one point where they're like on the fountain. It's just a montage of men.
Yeah, it's like the Straw Dogs opening.
Right. Yeah, it's the same time period too. I mean, early 70s. I mean, and that's the thing is like, these movies, some of these early Giallos by Martino are all from the sort of early 70s, where it's, sexual liberation is pretty new. The sort of taking the stoppers out of censorship on films is also pretty new.
Nudity.
Now, that's not exactly why they were probably being done at this time. A lot of it had to do with like showing stuff you can't see on television, and there's like a sort of a crass kind of commercial reason for it.
Pasolini opened the doors for a lot of nudity. He really did. Like a lot of the Giallo directors are like that guy. Doing what he did. Also for violence and his literary adaptations. Really did a lot for them.
But it is kind of a reflection of the culture of the time. I mean, where at least the popular culture hadn't got into that sort of 80s whiplash of fighting against sexual liberation because they're trying to fight against feminism. And when you get into the slashers of the 80s, the Friday the 13th series and whatever, there's this association with sexuality that is one-to-one associated with violence, trying to put those two things together in your mind. And what's really interesting about the Martino films is, yes, they have a lot of sex and they also have a lot of violence, but it feels like they are separated in these movies, right? So a lot of the characters in these movies have sex on screen. A lot of the characters also get killed on screen, but they're not connected in the same way. I mean, it is more so in Torso, but in Mrs. Wardh, for instance, there's just a lot of like seduction and sexual scenes and whatever, And they don't do the thing where it's like, go outside the window and look at something creepy, or, turn that sexuality into something, violent every single time.
Well, what's interesting in that one, though, is that it's the characters that try to take the sexuality and twist it and use it against the main character.
Right.
And they're the perpetrators. The bad guys are the ones who are trying to manipulate her sexuality.
Right.
It's not the filmmakers, it's not the viewer who's participating in it.
Exactly. And you're not, it's not making the audience create those associations that
sex
way.
is bad and
Exactly.
Dangerous.
And even in Torso, when those two things are combined a little more, it very much focuses on and tries in its way to explain how that relates to the main killer, like and that person's psychopathy,
out of his damn mind.
I
mean, what I really love about Torso too is that it's a person who's the killer, and you see his face, and you see him unravel. And it's like, you opened the episode with one of his funnier lines. And I like that he's a goof, because what he's trying to say, that women are no more than dolls and they're my playthings and I have to kill them. That should be laughable. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very much like an incel perspective, though.
Yeah.
It's not, things have not changed from like the insane, male mind that, specifically insane men, not all men being insane, but,
wait a second.
Wait a second. This is an incel podcast, so we have to respect them.
These are our listeners, Lucé.
Yeah.
And our hosts.
Yeah. The killer was wearing a Joe Rogan Experience shirt. I don't know if you guys saw that.
JRE. And so I like that he's positioned as a laughable maniac at the end. What you don't get with like these monster franchise killers that we're still sort of stuck in these endless IPs.
Right.
As a lover of the Halloween franchise too, I love Halloween. I love Scream. I'm exhausted. I need this to stop. But please stop.
Yeah.
But it's like we get these masked, they're coded as men, but they're also monsters who become heroes, and they're the ones who last the longest, and you don't really get to know anything about them at all. So like they're kind of cool. Like, it's not that cool, you know what I mean? Like, I love that a lot of Giallo films, and especially Martino stuff, is like, these guys are losers.
Yeah.
Fucking kill them.
Yeah,
It's
explicitly
awesome.
so. Explicitly so. Exactly. Like they're going out of their way to make sure that the audience is keyed into the fact that these guys are losers. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Danny, you've got to belong to me and no one else.
Also, very critical of hippie culture, too. I notice a lot of Giallos portray, whether accidentally or not, I forget which Giallo it is, but there was like one hippie singing a song busking, and it was one of the like most annoying songs I've ever heard. And like the hippie party of this just looks awful.
In Torso, when they're at the barn or whatever, that thing?
Yeah. There seems to be a bit of like criticism and apprehension around counterculture, like mainstream,
No.
Hey, what's the matter?
First, you've got to take your clothes off.
I think that's interesting too, because, there's a lot of, and Jeremy, you mentioned sexual revolution and a lot of like just general understanding of that being a time where everybody was becoming more sexual, but like nobody had dealt with the dynamics of mid-century sexism and oppression. And like, as we're getting into the 70s, or fighting for abortion access, or fighting for women to have bank accounts, to get divorced, like really major signs of freedom. That was like a big part of the second wave. And even in the beginning of the 70s, that stuff hadn't been clinched but at the same time, we're being like, hey, what about free love? And like, everyone should have sex with who they want, which sounds good. And, we're more in that space now, and it is a good thing, but without reckoning with like, wait, what does it mean for women to be available for sex all the time? We still haven't dealt with these expectations of like womanhood and chastity, and like there's no safe way to get an abortion yet, birth control doesn't have that much access yet. So like, it's still okay for men to fuck as much as they want, but there's still this idea that like women should be a certain way. So how can there, there's not like a lot of equality in the free love movement.
There's still a lot of contradictions to be unpacked.
Yeah, like there's a lot of danger in that still, and I think that gets eclipsed sometimes when, especially millennials, older or younger Gen X, people who didn't live through it are like looking back on that time. So I do wonder if some of that criticism, Alex, is from this idea that like, hey, this actually isn't safe for like the people who are, all the women who are like involved here. And I think it's interesting that one of the very memorable murders in this film takes place after that like little love-in.
Yeah, the mud chase.
Yeah.
I'll strangle the bitch!
And it's funny that you say, like, I that's such a great point, the smear of nostalgia and completely forgetting how unequal it was then, the halcyon, Summer of Love and all that. I know that's a bit earlier. But then don't forget, they all became the yuppies in the 80s, right? There's that famous turn, went from free love to
voting for Reagan.
Yes.
Exactly. The Reagans didn't acknowledge the AIDS crisis until like the late 80s. They were like very staunchly anti-sex education and anything having to do with women's rights. Essentially, they wouldn't sign the ERA. The ERA still hasn't passed. By the by, they were trying to do that in the 60s and then the 70s, and it got very close. And then Reagan was like, "No, stop doing drugs," and then that was like their focus. But yeah, it is interesting.
War on drugs, right? Wasn't that his?
Yeah, that was his. Yeah, Nancy Reagan's big campaign was the "Just Say No" campaign.
Just say Giallo.
Yeah.
Just say yellow. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting too, because 71 and 73, that's only a few years after 1969, right? Where it's like the Manson girls, drug craziness, murder spree, and like how that must have influenced his work a little bit as well, since there is like drug criticism in the films also.
Huh? What is it?
A nightmare. It was terrible. But I'm all right now.
Well, on that note, should we get into Mrs. Wardh and opening with a quote from Freud about our desire for murder is so strong and had to be one of the 10 Commandments?
That was fantastic, because like people clapped during that when that went up on the screen. The audience is like, "Yeah!" I'm like, "Oh no, you guys, they're trying to roast you."
Yeah. No, you don't know what that's about, do you?
There's no self-awareness in this audience.
Exactly.
No, please don't. Let him get away, Neil. You know what that man's like. Pervert and maniac.
I loved this one. I didn't like this the first time I saw it, but revisiting it, it was really, it just stood out. I mean, it was the triple cross, cool.
Yeah.
The ending is so cool. That's what made me fall in love with it. It's like, I was so surprised.
Yeah.
And,
Kevin Williamson was paying attention to this one, right?
Totally. Right?
Yes.
It's a scream, yeah.
Well, you watch so many of these types of movies, and I'm sure you guys feel this way, where you're just like, like you feel like you've seen a lot before, especially if you're into noir and you're into cinema history. But like this movie fucking got me.
Yeah.
And it made sense too. It wasn't one of those, you know what I really hate? And I'd be curious too, Alex, since this is like your passion for this type of like twisty turny stuff. But like when a movie is like, and here's the big reveal, and you actually can't put it together, it didn't give you any of the keys. And I'm like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, a good mystery is something that you should be able to watch back and see how all the pieces kind of fit in.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see in the writing, maybe they'll give it away early. If you knew the ending already and you're paying enough attention, you could have figured it out earlier.
Put it together. Yeah, and if you can't put it together, I'm like, well, you just wrote this way.
Then you didn't really write a mystery story,
possible.
Right? Because the mystery story is all about that. It's all about becoming the detective, reading it, and these are exactly what these are. It's figuring all this out, getting all the pieces in place, the chess pieces, knocking them off one by one. But then this one, all of a sudden, those pieces were working with this piece. Then this piece wasn't working with this piece. They were working together, and then this like constant unraveling and layers of onions unraveling at the end. It's just like nonstop, and they keep going into a different place. Now they're in a car. Now they're over here. Now it's like two other people that are working together. It was great.
It's
such a
so
cool
exciting.
ending.
Yeah. It with a lot of giallos, I kind of just surrender the plot because
Sure.
What got me into these
especially
films,
Argento, right? Like it's mostly a lot of dream type stuff, you know. This one felt a little bit more kind of straightforward, I felt. I mean, obviously some of the dreamy sequences and flashbacks and things, but
I mean, with Argento, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like some of his films feel like they're like written for the murders to make sense and piece together. Maybe it's not him, but I feel like I've heard that about some director, like where the plot is like almost inconsequential for the set pieces. But what got me into these, not to sound like I'm like 19, but it was the vibes, man.
I thought you were going to be like, it's the titties. You're like, not to sound like I'm 19, but I love those big bouncing boobs.
There's a lot of boobs, yeah.
No cap.
Sorry.
No cap bet, yeah.
Go on, Alex. Sorry to
besmirch
you
like a
immediately.
19-year-old in 2024. Like, you know, it was the vibes. The vibes are really...
Well, I think there a lot of them are like that, especially the good gialli are like that. You know, it's like this really great mystery, dreamy like sequences, almost a music video feel to it. In addition to usually having a fucking killer soundtrack and something you could listen to without even watching the movie. This one's got a great one. Torso's got a good one too. So this one's got it all, and they're very Hitchcockian in how they kind of lay stuff out. I just think they're brilliant. But I do get what you're saying, Alex, especially with a lot of Argento, a lot of Fulci. I'm just here for the fucking ride. I really don't care what this is about. I'm just going to watch some violence and some crazy shit.
So I'm not going to clog up my brain trying to figure this one out.
Why? Yeah, I feel like that's a waste of time, you know? You're not taking the ride then.
Well, half the time I'm never able. I'm horrible at predicting this stuff in general. And
just let it come to you.
And they very rarely. I mean, there's some cuts in this, like when it cuts to them together in the car.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I love it. I love it, and I'm just kind of like I've also tried to take off my like. The more I guess where a film is going, I'll tell you what. If I know where something's going, very often I'm like, I kind of saw that coming. You know what I mean?
I agree.
It ruins the experience, I think.
I agree.
It's that little thing, yeah. So like,
I didn't know where this one was going.
Not at all.
I mean, I didn't know where Torso was going either, but that's more of just the masked killer type, you know, one person, kind of a Michael Myers-esque, or if you will, but
Guess
Strange
the
Vice
killer.
is like
yeah.
Kevin Williamson, right? It's like the Scream style. We got Stu and, you know.
Well, it's like, who's crazy? It's like, is she crazy? Are they crazy?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Torso, the final girl is what surprised me. The quote-unquote final girl is what surprised me the most because it was not who I expected it to be, and the injury it's a nice displacement. It keeps her isolated in the house, but definitely not like if you're starting the film who it seems to kind of be centering on or who you thought And also it's weird that Torso ends with she doesn't really have that climactic like win over the guy. It's the other guy that comes in. So yeah, I mean there's just little surprises in both of them. But yeah, I mean the two things I want to point out. Okay, so I know we're talking about Wardh, but remember in Torso, the key in the newspaper?
Oh, incredible. Brilliant.
And the audience reaction when
sequence
the glove
of
picks up the key
awesome.
and puts it on
People
there.
screamed.
Everyone was gasping. Literally, Jeremy. Like you could hear people.
Cool.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
And that's the tension in that scene was incredible. And I was gonna say, Alex, I think it's actually you want to see the final girl kill the big bad, right? Like there a lot of those empowerment feelings, excitement that people get is from that. However, she did elongate. You know what I mean? Like she kept herself alive a lot longer. Like yes, she didn't kill him, but she. She had the fortitude to clean up all of her stuff in her room and make that room look like a vacation room that nobody was staying in there.
Right.
She was
folding the mattress and all those little things. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's really smart. She did the thing with the mirror and hitting the light and trying to get people's attention.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, like and then even, the thing with the key, it was like a little too late at that point, but still she was very clever and very thoughtful about it and didn't, a lot of times I feel like you'll see these movies where it's like when she's downstairs watching the killer, the girl tries to go and attack the guy or tries to run out the door, and like she was being very quiet and thoughtful about how she was going to like hide and sort of wait him out. So I do think there was a lot of ingenuity on her part, even if she wasn't the one who got to kill him.
Yeah.
George, The razor killer has met his own end at the hands of his last victim.
Well, it's over. End of the nightmare, darling. We'll make up for lost time.
So Torso is very much, okay, this proto-slasher, and you once you sort of learned what a slasher is, the mechanics of Torso kind of makes sense to us. What's interesting about Wardh is how it starts off, or it is mostly the entire time like a film noir, melodrama. But they are just more explicit about some murders in between. Whereas, if it was, a classic period film noir, it would be off screen, some of that stuff, or bloodless or whatever.
Shadows and yeah.
Well, and there's this psychosexual stuff going on too, which is interesting.
Exactly, and you see like the connections of like, okay, so yeah, giallo means yellow in Italian, and is based on sort of the pulps
novels.
That would be
yellow pulp
written
novels.
around that. Yeah, exactly. And this one is kind of that sort of bridge into what I think giallo came to be in people's minds, where it's more of that kind of psychological slasher. But where it kind of starts is in this thing where it's it's sort of a detective story, sort of like who's behind all this and what's happening, and there's a razor slasher or whatever, but that person is not who you're following. You're not following the sort of victims of the razor slasher exactly. It's this very interesting, like, brackish combination of sort of film noir and slashers, essentially.
I mean, the first, Jeremy, one of the things that right when you started is, the Torso, that car murder is like, isn't that like the most like cliche slasher murder that also is like the realm of like urban legends of like teenagers making out in a car and, someone coming up to the car.
Yeah. Well, and it also seems so much like the death of Annie in Halloween.
Yeah.
Her being choked to death in the car by Michael Myers. I mean, I haven't seen John Carpenter speak on this film directly, but there's a few different scenes that feel so inspired, that feel like they were lifted and then used in Halloween.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Or it was something like, Bob Clark watched Torso, got really inspired, and then John Carpenter watched Black Christmas.
Black Christmas, yeah.
I'm Johnny Tommaso, the scarf seller in the piazza. No, I'm not trying to blackmail. 2 million lira would be plenty now. Pretty cheap. It ought to pay the initial expense. You're responsible for my complete silence. See you tonight.
Have you guys seen the Red Queen kill 7 times?
I fucking love that movie. It is so good. And also very much like A Strange Case of Mrs. Wardh, that it's this family psychodrama that somebody is trying to get into someone else's head and make them feel crazy, and like, oh, there's something supernatural going on and it's bigger than all of us. And it's really just like this conniving family drama.
Yeah, I think that I'm so, that's such a good point. And mine was a very shallow point of, I think they used the same apartment.
I like the boobs in it.
Yeah, that's what I was supposed to be like, titties!
Yeah.
I
Well,
like the apartment and the boobs.
And the way that the boobs looked in the apartment, that's what really got me.
Kind of good knees.
Yeah. The curtains swayed, the titties swayed. It really had a vibe.
You can't do that in books, man.
Yeah.
No, a book could never. That's why I don't read.
Yeah.
That's why I've never learned to read.
Yeah. Who needs to?
Stop me from learning. Yeah.
No, but this one is so great. It just like all the little twists and turns. Like you were really sort of following the kitchen sink drama in this one. You're really like invested in like, oh, is she gonna leave her square of a husband to go off with Prince Charming, and like when the guy was sort of seducing her at the party, the audience was like, yeah, go for it, leave that loser, and like you could feel the interest in the movie was along those lines where it was like, this woman and her, the square husband that she, married because she wanted to get out of this sadomasochistic
Well, and what's interesting is, like, yes, the diplomat husband
Yeah.
is boring as hell, but he seems really sweet. He seems to care about her, and like
Seems like
actually
it.
is pretty patient, given how she seems to be outwardly cheating on him. And I really was moved by that because, you know, there's a lot of horror movies, or even think about something at the same time, like Rosemary's Baby, right? That's another sign of psychosexual supernatural film where it's like you don't have to be familiar with that story to know that John Cassavetes' character is a piece of shit. Like, you know that you get a feeling that he's like gaslighting her and throwing her under the bus, and he minimizes her feelings like multiple times. So by the time that you get to the understanding that he sacrificed her so that he could be a famous actor, fucking loser. Like, you're like, oh,
well, how else
I'm
do you
not
become a famous
actually.
actor?
Right, because he's talentless.
Yeah, exactly.
Idiot.
Especially if you don't have talent. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like,
Sacrifice your wife.
I think you can see that, though. You're like, that makes sense. This guy's been shady. But I think that, like, kind of knife twist with Wardh is that when you see him paired up with like her lover, you're like, what the hell? This nice square was actually like trying to fuck with her, was part of the gaslighting. And I think that makes it so much scarier. And again, this is what Martino does really well in all of his movies, that I think is like whether or not it was intentional, I think that you can do a strong feminist reading of it. That's like, all men are out to get women.
Right.
Like,
well,
men are
think about how deep
dangerous.
the conspiracy went. It was her ex-boyfriend, her current husband, and her lover.
And her
or whatever.
lover, every man in her life.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so scary.
Yeah.
That's a great point, and it underscored, no pun intended, by I believe one of the first female composers in Italian history, right?
I didn't know that. I love that.
Yeah, Nora Orlandi, and it's the song that's reused in the Kill Bill.
Kill Bill, right?
I love that, like scuzzy guitar and that hum. It's so behind this behind the camera presence from a woman in film. Very cool for the Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh.
That is very cool. You know, something else that I really like that he sort of explores in both films, but is very present in Wardh, is like you were talking about how the killer isn't really the focus, weirdly. And it's sort of like, yes, this thing that she's nervous about the entire time, but it's not the focus, because the focus is sort of like, yes, crime is happening and we don't know who it is. But there's also like, you're sort of in danger all of the time from people that you think are like normal people are also wearing a mask. Sort of what I'm trying to say, right? Like there's big scary things out there that are obvious, but like day-to-day people can also not be trusted.
Right.
And I don't see like, there's a little bit of that in Scream, but you don't really see that quite as much, that juxtaposition of having the two things going on at one time.
Oh yeah.
In Scream, it's very, very like the fact that these murders are going on in Scream, it's very present in the movie, and everyone's thinking about it and everyone's talking about it. And this one, it is like kind of happening, but it's in the background, and meanwhile, I've got to go shopping, I've got to go have lunch. I'm gonna go meet your hot cousin from down south or whatever, and all these different things, and that's kind of what I mean about like they did the kitchen sink so well to where you're really invested in those things while the murder stuff is like kind of humming along in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and something that stuck out to me that I think is interesting too, and obviously kitchen sink is just a colloquial phrase, but there is this domestic drama aspect to it, and it's like the big turning point in the film where you think that she's being murdered. Her lover is like dragging her into the kitchen, turning up the gas, getting all the cracks filled. Yes, thank you, carbon monoxide. He's trying to kill her in a kitchen, right? Which is like the site of domesticity. Yes,
that's where I eat.
Especially 1971. This is still a woman's domain for the most part, you know?
God, how great was the detail of the ice cube like latching as a locked room mystery thing.
That was the other one. Yeah.
God, that was great. I know. I'm like, why are all these regular people so smart? That's what I'm like. Sometimes I think about that stuff too much, and I'm like, what the fuck would I do?
The one I always think about is when Jake Gittes runs over his stopwatch in Chinatown to know what time the guy left. I'm like, I remember being like a kid seeing that. I was like, oh my God, that's so smart. And like anytime I see that in a movie, basic putting together, MacGyver kind of stuff in a small enclosed space. I'm very impressed by it every time.
I know, and I'm like, how will I figure out which one of my cats is eating all of the dry food? I don't know. I'll never know. Like,
oh my God.
The lowest stakes. I'm still very confused.
Have you guys looked into the other titles that these films are released under?
Yeah, I did look at a few of
Torso
them.
has an incredible original title.
Yes,
these,
it does.
What are these bodies?
The bodies bear traces of carnal violence.
Yes. Can you believe that? And then it was just like the NYC Grindhouse theater scene was like, this isn't gonna fit on our marquee. It's Torso, and then that's the one it becomes known by. It is not the better title.
Yeah. Well, especially because if you're getting excited thinking that there's gonna be a lot of torsos being cut off, you're gonna be disappointed.
Yes. Yeah. I was actually kind of, because I'm not a big I don't love on-screen brutality of that level. I love horror films, but I'm not like a gore hound by any means. And so I was really happy the first time that I watched it that I was like, because I thought I was going to be watching it like this, that it was going to be sawing bodies. And I was so happy that it was mostly off-screen, because this is the kind of stuff I want.
And good angles too. You could see the action without seeing the. I thought that was really
Hitchcockian and you see the bodies
again, right?
moving sort of, where you could
That's worse to me.
Saw.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because I can put all that shit together of the gristle and everything happening, and the sound was good too. But just seeing the body move was awful.
Really gross.
But very effective. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's, I don't know, I would really just prefer that.
I agree, although give me squibs all day from the 70s. But yeah, I do kind of agree, yeah.
But when we start getting to 90s and French extremism and stuff, and I respect the hell out of everybody who likes those films and the artists who make those films, there's an audience for it. But I just can't. Yeah, I can't. And I feel like so much horror today is how can we fuck people up? And I'm I don't really want to be fucked up. I want to be oh no. Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
Ooh, is she going to leave her husband? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Julie, forget your husband. And look what I brought you. He just flew in today from Australia with the most fantastic news.
Oh, and seeing the bags being dragged out, I think that is super disgusting
and just the strange sizes of the bags. Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what it is. It's the way that they're shaped and the sizes of them. You know that this is just stacks of people's parts, But you don't need to see it. It's just a black bag.
Yeah, and the lead character, that actress does such a great job, such horror on her face, and you're thinking about oh my God, these are her best friends. And she's watching this happen, and she was asleep. And it, one of you brought up urban legends earlier, and this kind of reminded me of this urban legend that people would tell at sleepovers when I was a kid, and really shook me to my core. I really hated it. And every now and then I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and it'll pop into my head, and I'm like, well, I guess I won't be sleeping tonight. But it's a story of a group of girls doing a weekend getaway, and one girl. And there's a dog, and one girl wakes up in the middle of the night and she feels the dog licking her hand, and she's comforted by it. She goes back to sleep. She wakes up the next morning. Everyone is murdered, including the dog. And there's this message that's I spared you because your hand tasted so good in the night. And it's just
ooh, I love that.
Why you were sleeping.
Yeah, that's why you don't let your hand dangle outside of the covers at night. Yeah,
I know. And this killer licked your hand, and you were like, "How peaceful, back to sleep."
Good
I know,
boy.
and I'm like,
"Good boy."
I know. And I'm like sleeping completely.
Killer good boy.
Everything is inside.
You can't have any body parts off the bed because
if I wake up and my hand is off the bed, it is like zoop. Doesn't matter how many times I check the chain on the door before I go to bed. I'm like, I will not be licked in the night. Not unconsensually.
That's a big problem on Nextdoor right now in Los Feliz. People
being licked in the night.
You know, imagine paying those prices and still getting licked in the night.
Hey,
seriously,
if you, that's not a bad gig if you can do that.
Pretty easy work, yeah.
What was the first giallo y'all saw?
Mine was Suspiria.
Tenebrae.
Suspiria for me too.
Probably 4 Flies on Gray Velvet, I think.
Whoa, what a great one.
Yeah.
You know, I watched Bird with the Crystal Plumage for the first time 3 years ago, and it blew me the fuck away.
The cinematography of that one is incredible.
Yes, that's another one with like twist, twist, twist. And I will say that I don't know if this counts as a reveal, but I'm going to say that it is. The reveal that the bird with the crystal plumage is just that one bird that's at every zoo with like the yellow spiky hair. I was like, okay, you guys really oversold this bird. I've seen this bird before.
Well, really, that's what they did with the title of The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh, by the way. I was like really waiting for that. I was like, you know, the whole time I was thinking, oh, geez, is she the one, like, you know, setting all these things up?
Yes,
like, because
exactly.
that's her
vice.
vice.
She just likes like BDSM.
Exactly.
Like,
she loves the violence, and then
normal.
she loves to kill her prey. And it was
not just a clever title.
It's just a title. I mean, what did it refer to? I mean, was it just that, you know, her previous relationship was so violent?
Right, but because they did show her that she was somewhat about that, right? With
she
Gene,
liked the BDSM, but then
right.
because he was also, which actually, okay, I'm gonna go into the feminist perspective on this again. I actually think that this is really progressive and thoughtful, is the idea that like she likes BDSM sex and he provided that, but then he was also abusive.
Right.
And I think
Went
that that's
far.
like a common thing in like the kink scene as well, especially like as a woman, you're trying to like navigate that where you're like, yes, I do want my hand licked consensually, but I don't want you to kill my friends. You know, there's like, there are these things that you're like,
I
like
draw the
I
line
want
at killing
this.
the friends and the dog, okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's too kinky for me. Sorry to be so vanilla.
Boring.
But yeah, where it's like, I do want these certain things in this way, and then when I say stop, I want to stop, or like I don't want my boundaries to be pushed, and I do have these hard limits, and just because I like this doesn't mean I like that, right? And that's something that like now I think people are still. That's the kind of thing you still have to have so many conversations about, and people's boundaries gets pushed, and there's a lot of abuse in the scene. I can't imagine.
My safe word is Mrs. Wardh.
Yeah, incredible. Hard to get out though, and I think if your mouth was gagged, it would kind of get garbled. You want to do something? Yeah. Like what? Sorry, I heard plastic board.
I could go get the plastic board if you need it.
Yeah, I'm gonna break your fucking ass with the plastic board. I know. You want it to be something a little more of a punch to it. Simple. It's like a dog's name, you know.
Yeah.
Bio, loud, quick, easy, ends in a vowel. All that to say, I can't imagine in the 70s, you know, we're talking about free love and like supposed to be like more equitable, beginning to be an equitable time for sex, for the sexes. And it's like, I think BDSM, I can't even imagine. I bet people weren't able to talk about that if you were into that at that time. You know, you had to be a part of a newsletter that got sent around on a mimeograph.
Yeah, a zine, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, there must have been so much. Well, we see this in the movie, which I think is fascinating. She has all this shame. She like has these compulsions, and she loves it, but then she also feels bad about it. And then it's connected to this man who is also shitty to her. And what does that mean that she likes a thing that this guy did who's also bad to her? And like, that's like a real thing. I think you'd have to take to therapy. Like, that really is a lot to unpack. And so to have that, I think that's, anyways, all of that to say, I think her strange vice is that she just likes BDSM, and it just sucks that was with this guy who was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And like, so she's not getting this from the dry diplomat. Yeah. She thinks maybe the new young lover could do that for her, but they don't even like get there yet. And because these two guys know that she liked that shit. They're like, yeah, let's feed into that.
Their advantage or to her disadvantage.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so I think there's some interesting stuff there where it's like, oh yeah, it's the free love movement. Women have to love sex now. So like, you have to love what I'm doing. Right. If you don't love it, you're crazy and you're not being progressive enough. And like, I think all of that is like in the soup of this movie.
Right.
I only married Neil to get rid of Jean. I believed that Neil was quiet but like a rock. He's your husband, darling. And you can't expect everything from only one man. Carol, skip it.
Watching Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh, this did occur to me. What do you think is worse, being blackmailed for an affair or being blackmailed in shillings?
In shillings?
Yeah, for like the demand is in shillings. Yeah. Like,
was that in that movie? I didn't remember that at all.
Yeah,
she's an American, but being blackmailed in British English.
So it's bad. It's bad enough that you like have to like go through the exchange.
Do the exchange, yeah. How the hell would you even shillings.
Know? I wonder it had to just be maybe the translation or
just let me know when I've reached the amount that you need.
How do you count these things? What the hell is shilling?
Cling, cling, cling. Shillings.
She has like a bag with a money sign on it.
Yeah,
She's
exactly.
like, I gotta pay my blackmailer in coin.
I had to go to the bank.
It's my blackmail money. I love rough sex.
I love rough sex.
And I'm really regretting it.
The cost of rough
I do think that's where what goes back to Jeremy, what you were saying. You thought that maybe Mrs. Wardh was the murderer the whole time, or at least the puppet master of all these murders. Because I thought that they were setting it up with those her remembering her love of the BDSM, these very intense sexual experiences.
Notebook ass flashbacks of her being
it was like the Notebook with boobs, with the boobies,
much kinkier and much more violent.
Extreme kink Notebook. I thought
that's what they were setting up. I have been asking Nicholas Sparks to write for years, and his publisher said, "Stop emailing us."
Thank you for this unsolicited manuscript and fan fiction.
I've been blocked again.
Yeah. So I've started 8 more emails, and I will see Allie get railed.
You're a bird, I'm a bird. That's all I gotta say.
Hello. Is this Julie Wardh?
Yes, who's this?
I want to congratulate you on certain imaginative and rather deviant practices, which I'm sure your eminently respectable husband has never suspected you of.
You must be mad. Is this Jean?
Another thing about Torso that really kind of got me. Okay, so I'm very Croatian, and the Mediterranean, like Italian. The witness says, I was going to take a crap, but I got constipated when he saw the bodies. Right, like that is such like something that like one of my like a distant cousin in Croatia might say, like an actual joke, right?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
That kind of like gallows humor, yeah.
Gallows, but also just like lowest level denominator, like just like poop jokes, right? Like
poop jokes, yeah.
But it was a poop joke over a dead body, right?
Yeah. And so like there's like something about like
Bad
the
timing.
Mediterranean. And like all the guys glaring. So like whenever, we go visit family in Croatia, like there is like a thing about like a bit of a massage. I don't even want to say a bit. It's just like it's a very masculine machismo culture. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of that like in these like, I think it's Perugia, in these like small Italian towns where they are. I think Perugia is the city that they are. Yes, but then they leave and they go to other places, and I'm just like, these just look like Croatians, and I recognize this behavior. I recognize these jokes. It's not like a stamp of approval. It's just like I've seen this all very firsthand, and in this country too. But like under that tan Mediterranean sun, like the gesticulating, I'm like, oh, this is I've seen this in my own life. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the Italians, especially in the 70s, were certainly guilty of some of those things as well.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I mean, do you guys remember the line, red and black could become the colors of your death? That is the most giallo...
That's a great title for a film.
Yeah. Why isn't it a title?
That could have fit on the marquee, too.
Yeah.
No, that's all. Oh, I think that this was a traveling double feature, Cinematic Void, because I saw people on Letterboxd put it like Music Box. I think he went to Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, so,
oh, wow.
Just wanted to point that out there in case people...
With Mrs. Wardh and Torso.
But I was reading that this film gained popularity around here because it was double billed with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I'm like, wow, that'd be really fun to see it
at the time. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, but I can't imagine two separate films. Like, they're so different from each other.
So different, yeah.
That's what the title Torso really does a disservice to the film, because it does make it seem like it's about that more than this, like, yeah, it's a slasher, but then it becomes a home invasion movie, and then it's all set against this like gorgeous artistic backdrop. Right. I mean, visually, it's such a different film. You know, Texas Chainsaw is like one of the most sweaty, disgusting, puke-inducing sort of backgrounds you can think of, right? Especially when you know that
Texas
people were
heat.
like, yeah, totally just actually surrounded by corpses and meat that whole time.
Just that sound of flies the whole time throughout the movie. It's like, you know, it stinks. Yeah.
It's viscerally disgusting, and that's what makes it great. That adds to it so much. But like Torso, it's like people are being murdered, and you're still like, I kind of want to go there.
Yeah, the wide shots of them walking through those squares, the town squares of Perugia.
Oh, God.
Just
like, I wonder what the Airbnb for that palazzo is.
Oh my God. When she's like running up her stairs and it's like, is she in a museum? No, that's her apartment building.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
If there is something a bit, I don't want to say anarchic, but like a little bit subversive about Giallo beyond, you know, the surface stuff. One of the earliest guys to write in the genre, Augustine De Angelis, was killed by fascists. He was beaten to death by a fascist activist. So I think there is something about a little bit of like a middle finger towards conventional entertainment. It's pulling from like, you know, what are considered like dirtier genres, and where it like went on to influence obviously with slashers. I mean, this is all well-trod territory, but I love that real life political tie to you know, again, giving the middle finger to an authoritarian regime. Very cool for a genre, man, you know?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like the directors of these times, like they were progressives, like that they were very, and like you were saying, like Pasolini, who, you know, essentially died for his art, like they were, there's none of this like fucking mush mouth, weak, spineless bullshit that's going on now, where it's like, you can't have things be political and we shouldn't say anything, and then people who are just, you know, cynically cashing in on things like Me Too and Black Lives Matter and you know, COVID and fascism, like, and it's just like, hey, this is hot right now, so I can make a quick buck doing it. You know, like I was saying, like Torso isn't necessarily like explicitly being like, hey, all women are in danger of men, but like it doesn't, you don't need a character to say that, you know, and now we're constantly putting these political messages.
Not telling, yeah.
Exactly, and that's what I really crave, is that, yeah, you can watch this film and just be like, it's beautiful, it's funny, it's surprising, and you can walk away and you can sit here and then you can also critically analyze it as well. You can get a little deeper about who these filmmakers were and what their perspectives were, and that's kind of art that I really crave now, and I think that we're really missing. That's not to say that, you know, obviously we have people like Jordan Peele who I think do that really effectively, where you could just watch it and have it be very straightforward, or you can like, you know, read into it more. But like stuff is now, it feels like it's either heavy-handed or it's just complete drivel.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I just love this. I love this time period where people were like, yeah, like you were saying, oops, sorry, I hit my mic. Alex, yeah, they were just coming out of this very fascist time period in Italy, you know, and it's like we are plummeting towards fascism now, and it's so hard to make money, right? It's so hard to get things funded now, and we really have to go through these corporations which are going to be supporting and funding fascism, and really work hand in hand by pulling art off the shelves and making it so that we don't have access to film, right? Why physical media is so important. Like, it sucks that these corporations are the ones that we as filmmakers need to sort of like suck their dick to like get any money from. So of course you're only going to get people who are spineless worms trying to make films, or people who don't know anything, you know, we were talking about the Scream franchise, handing over this canonically gay franchise to two straight men who then were like, you know what, this character's gay because she's got a lot of rainbow pins on and she talks about being gay. When it's like, there wasn't any characters talking about being gay in in Scream, but like it is such a gay film. Those two killers are so gay, you know. Like
for sure.
You don't have to say a representation isn't just being like, I've got a rainbow pin on, you know. It's like actually hiring people, actually writing interesting scripts with a perspective to it. And now I'm just going off because I'm like furious all the time.
I think that's what's so exciting about Torso, though, is like that, like, you know, it does have that sort of anti-fascist perspective in everything it does, you know, just like being the opposite of what the fascist art from the Mussolini time and then sort of the post, you know, big American occupation time in Italy would have them do. But it is also has such a perspective that it is, you know, not uncritical of things like, the worst parts of the free love or the hippie culture in that barn scene that we talked about a little earlier. And like, you know, how the Carol character was like, yeah, fine, let's make out with these guys, and then she's like, fuck you guys, and like, you know, and all the rest of the people around there being the mute witness to what was happening, and her saying no, and then sort of chasing after her, you know.
Nobody going to look for Carol.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Look, I've always said that characters in movies need to reflect my political beliefs. If they don't, the director's a bad human. That's how I feel about it. You know, yeah. I've never gotten that. Like, people, like, audiences getting mad because the character does something bad. And that is, like, the lowest level of reading. And it seems we're so stuck in that right now.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's just not how art works, and you can't expect it to be like that, because also, you know, that is not how drama works and everything else. But it is funny, you know, this movie is, you know, okay, it's a proto-slasher. It is not quite as keyed in my opinion, as Mrs. Wardh, in terms of, like, you know, having the kitchen sink drama be kind of front and center. But, you know, you are, as the audience, you know, really into sort of this group of girls and what they're doing, and, you know, they're trying to get out of town while, you know, things are hairy, that they, you know, go to that insane, you know, castle at the top of the hill in that small little village, and then it's a sapphic wonderland, and the delivery boy, you know, like, is, you know, having to, like, you know, put all the groceries on top of his boner because he just, like, can't take it that they're all, like, you know, sunning themselves outside topless.
I think he's also watching the two lesbians have sex too.
Is that who that was supposed to be? Okay.
It kind of goes between. I really like that a lot, because you're like, oh shit, is that the killer? And then it's revealed to be the grocery boy, but then it does also end up being the killer is also there, which I think is a fun kind of misdirect.
Right. Who peeping Tom's the peeping Tom?
Yeah.
Right? Like
who peeps the peepers? Exactly.
Stefano! Come out! What are you doing there?
Yeah, in the parody of that, there'd be a person behind the person watching him and being like, oh yeah, look at those girls. Yeah, look harder.
Look harder. That was the alternate title.
Yeah, look harder.
Look Hard was the first one.
That would be a Brian De Palma film, I think.
Look Hard.
Oh my God! Yes, the voyeurism. Yes. Oh, there's so much voyeurism, especially in Torso. That is such
even the opening credit sequence. Sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's just boom, straight tie to De Palma, and you know, he has been accused occasionally, I believe, of making American giallos every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that was his intention. I think he might have accused himself, right? I think that was what he was trying to do. I mean, I'd put Carrie in giallo territory.
Yeah, I think he stumbled into a Hitchcock barn here and then. You know, I think it was pretty purposeful. You're right there.
Absolutely Hitchcockian.
I've really loved, like, talking about the movie, and, you know, hearing the feminist perspective, Lucé, of these films. I really have loved hearing and the ingenuity of, like, the final girl in the first film. I mean, thank you for flagging that. That's such a valid point, because she, you know, the mirror is, like, that's such a clever trope. Also, just, like, something that goes back to, like, it's like a smoke signal. It's such, like, an early human like you could make a film with like the Paleolithic era, and someone could still maybe find something shiny to get attention. You know.
Yes. You know what else I think is kind of interesting that we didn't talk about, where it's like when I was talking about her prolonging her own life, she even does so at the end where she's trying to talk to him, right? We do see this with other movies as well.
That is really the for me, like the real
final battle,
meat and potatoes of this movie. It's that whole sequence when she comes home and finds her friends dead, having had their hands licked, and she runs up the stairs and, like you said, like tries to make it so that she's not seen. It is kind of Hitchcockian in the sense that there's a lot of little pieces to that of like, just like, here's this little shot, here's that little shot, here's this little thing she's trying to do to make sure she's not noticed so that, she can survive the situation. And that through to maybe, like the scene you're talking about where, she's trying to keep
They're
him
on
talking,
the stairs
keep him talking.
Together.
Yeah.
And she's moving slowly past
best
him.
part.
And I do think that there's something interesting in there where it's like, sometimes it's like, as a woman in a dangerous situation, you're like, all I can do is like, maybe I can appeal to your humanity, remind you that I'm a human and that we had a connection.
I'm not a doll of
like,
flesh and bone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's that like sort of emotional labor, that's been written so much about, or it's like that, like women so much, like we've just been socialized to, it's okay for us to be emotional. And that's kind of the only thing that it's okay for us to do. And then it's still wielded against us, but it's like the ways in which women have had to use their emotions to protect themselves in so many ways, where it's like, okay, she has nothing now. She's in her nightgown, her ankle's broken. All she can do is try to be like, remember these great times that we had together? And like, I'm not mad at you for killing my friends. Lots of people kill my friends. I've seen it before. No big deal. Have you seen the sunshine?
Yes,
Let's
they
walk
were
outside.
flesh and bone dolls. You're right.
Yes. I've been saying that about Carol for years. And so there is like, with horror films, we tend to be like, the creative kills and the ways you fight back and the way you're finally able to outsmart the killer. And it's like, I don't think you should undercut the like emotional work that she puts in after everything else has kind of been stripped away from her.
Absolutely.
Right.
I guess lastly, too, I do think it's interesting that a scarf is like a big weapon in this film, too, because we think of Giallo a lot as being like knives, and obviously
razors,
we see, and like the hacksaw is obviously a big part of torso, but like this is like a strangulation movie for the most part, which is really interesting too, because that's also a very intimate crime, hitting someone with something or stabbing with someone with something, there's creating a distance. But when you use, like when you strangle somebody, you have to be like face to face with them. And the girls recognize the killer. You see this like look of recognition, which I think is really interesting. And then a scarf too, like obviously Italy is like fashion was so major, and there was a lot.
Yeah, right.
Italian fashion was like very different from American fashion, but then at the same time in the 70s, you do see a lot of experimentation with like gender presentation. So like scarves were something that were more like all gender items, but at the same time, I do think the scarf is more traditionally associated with like feminine dressing as well. So I think there's something interesting to that being like the murder weapon of the women as well.
Having just watched Confessions of a Shopaholic, the comedy,
Isla Fisher.
Yeah, it ends on a scarf. She becomes a columnist, the girl with the green scarf, and the last fading shot is the scarf slung over her shoulder. So, with the cinematic places, the scarf will bring you. As a
Romy and Michelle also ends on let's fold scarves.
I love that.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's take this a step further. You guys know the other urban legend, the tale of the green ribbon, which absolutely devastated
the
me.
head falling off.
Oh, I thought you were gonna talk about Isadora Duncan, but I don't know this one.
The green ribbon basically is a story about a boy and a girl who meet. She's wearing a green ribbon choker. The boy is just totally captivated by her. Of course, she's beautiful, a wonderful manic pixie dream girl, wants to get to know her more, wants to know what the deal is about this ribbon she wears every day. And she's like, can't tell you, a little secret. And he falls deeper and deeper in love with her. And then when they're old enough, they get married. And he's like, now that we're married, can I please take your choker off? What's under choker there. Why do you wear this choker? And she's like, no, not yet. And their whole lives, he's like bugging the shit out of her about this choker. And on her deathbed, she's like, now you may remove my choker. And he does, and her fucking head falls off. And so we're led to believe, against all medical science, that this woman's head has only been kept on for her entire life by a little thin green ribbon, which absolutely devastated me as a child.
Yeah.
And I still think about it. Every time I put a choker on, I'm like, will my head fall off later tonight when I take this off? What is the magic of this piece of jewelry?
I knew that as a little red ribbon. That's the
Oh, interesting. Well, it's
totally
interesting that you bring
story.
that up because it actually, this is a story that, Alvin Schwartz, Tales
Scary
from a Dark
stories
Room.
to tell in the dark.
Yeah. He didn't write this. It's like a story that actually dates back to the French Revolution because sex workers at the time wore chokers, red chokers, actually, Alex, to show that, I work. This is how I work. This is how I earn my money. Look for my choker, a little wink, wink, nod, nod. And this story originated at this time because there was also a lot of fear of people getting their heads cut off, right? Because the French Revolution had gotten out of hand and lots of people who weren't just like the rich elite were being murdered. And it was very easy to get, taken out to the guillotine. And then there was also this fear of sex and sexually transmitted diseases and things like that. And so the idea that they were kind of conflating the guillotine with the red ribbon, and then also the idea that you should know kind of if someone's wearing a red ribbon, that they're a sex worker, and you're hounding someone over and over and over about their red ribbon. It's sort of like saying, hey, who is everybody that you slept with? There's this sexual aspect to it of this guy kind of asking this woman over and over and over again about the ribbon. Is kind of I should know what your history is. Tell me all these things about you. So there's a connection too with the scarf and sexuality and women wearing, neck pieces and neck adornments that does date back to that time period and has this sexual connotation to it, and this men being skeptical and scared of it, dating back to stories from that time period.
Fascinating.
I have a whole episode about it on It's Always Halloween called The Green Ribbon.
Very cool.
Yeah, where I go into 3 different stories tracing the history of it. So
okay.
I'm fascinated by it because that story scared me so much. And so now anytime I see stuff about women's necklaces and fascinating. It's all about how scared we are of women having sex.
I honestly thought you were going to go the Isadora Duncan throwing her scarf, saying bye to her friends, and it gets caught in the back tire, and that's what brought it into one of the most beloved choreographers of the 20th century. Yeah, choked on her own scarf. Very horrible.
My mom used to tell me that story as a kid when I wanted to wear scarves. So it really took me a long time to get into that.
You're unpacking a lot of stuff about things around your neck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clothing around your neck. Yeah.
Oh my God, don't let me die that way, guys.
Deal.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have made a pact here tonight. I will die of natural causes at 101.
Yeah.
Brian will be overseeing that for the rest of his life. Deal.
or hand licking, one of the others.
I can't. Yeah, I cannot die. I cannot die via hand licking either.
So many rules.
So many rules. Well, taking us back to Scream, right? You got to pay attention to the rules to stay alive.
Exactly.
Let's go for the police and get away from here.
Well, thanks again for joining us, guys. Alex, we'll start with you. Anything you'd like to plug or anywhere that people can find you online?
Yeah, still writing for Hard Times. You can see articles there and writing for
I love Hard
Film
Times
Noir.
so much.
It's so
Great
good.
work.
Oh, good.
It's
His
one of
work
my
is really
favorite.
great.
It calms me down when everything else is a mess. I just
Exactly.
am I'm going to the Hard Times and reading everything.
Oh, I'm glad you. I've loved the editors. I'm very honored to be a contributor and and
lifelong punk person here, where I'm just finally satirizing this scene that deserves it so badly.
Oh, I hope you got a piece of the door of 824 Gelman, the Berkeley spot. They had a big fundraiser. They sold the door.
I know. I did not. I'm not I love a fundraiser. I love sharing a link, but I'm not a person who helps fundraisers at this point in my life. I'm the fundraiser. I need the.
Does anyone want to fundraise me? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in this old building where people are licking my hands. I gotta get out of here. No, but someday I hope to own things that rich people want to sell to me.
Yeah, I remember it was like $100 for a little like couple inches. I was like, I'm good.
So cool.
Yeah, but you can cut me up and sell me like that. Great, you know.
Hot, yeah.
Yeah.
How much is your torso going for?
There we go. Yeah, and then only film noir. I've taken a little break because I've been busy with other projects, but I'm going to be getting back into posting more regularly. And that's me, Alex Vlahov. Hello.
Alex, have you been to Videotech? We have a huge film noir section.
I actually wanted to ask where. Yeah, I have not been to Videotech. No.
We moved in the fall. We used to be in South Pasadena, and now we're in the sort of South Highland Park, kind of right before it turns into Montecito Heights on Figueroa. Kind of, if anyone knows about our Footsies, we're like right kind of near Footsies. But yeah, it's a really great. We're in a corner spot. It's really nice. It's a little bigger. We have a screen now so that we can do screenings.
Nice.
So we've been doing screenings every Friday night, taking a week off here and there. And you can also rent it for screenings and parties as well, which is really fun. But yeah, Alex, I'm always there on Fridays, Thursdays and Fridays typically, and then random other times. But definitely come in. I think you'd be really into our noir section. And we really niche stuff down too into like directors and actors and time periods. So it seems like something
your
you'd get
organization
into.
is
I'd love
the
that.
best.
Absolutely would love to. Absolutely have to. Thank you so much. It would be great to stop by.
Yay!
And Lucé, anywhere that people should be
come to Videotech, obviously.
At Videotech.
Yes, and then yes, I'm the host of It's Always Halloween. We've been on a bit of a hiatus because I am planning a wedding, but I've been.
And on your wedding night, are you finally going to take off that damn ribbon?
No, he has to wait until I die. Like, I don't need my head falling off as I'm going down on him. Like, that would traumatize him. I love him.
Yeah, that would become the strange vice of Lucé Brennan.
Yeah, I do. But what a great headline for the paper.
Yeah,
okay,
guys, headline. Yes.
Yeah. I'm mixed on this. I got a month to figure it out. Thanks for putting it in my head. But I do, I've been doing the podcast now for 3.5 years, so there is that much, that much episodes. It's I get into history, like I was talking about with the green ribbon, but then I also have a hotline and a email, so people write in and share their own histories, their own personal traditions, and we have listeners from all over the world. So the episode that's coming out, I'm sure it'll all be already be out, but the newest episode, I have a letter from Belgium, I have a phone call from England, and so people talking about, how they celebrate spooky history and stuff all over, which is very cool because I think personal history, modern history, we need to gather stories and protect stories, and that's how we keep fascist governments and things from rewriting the way that things are. Like, we have to collect the stories of individuals. I think that matters just as much as this larger history that we become accustomed to. So
damn right.
That's a passion of mine, along with cinema, and my newest film, Surprise, which also has a little bit of murder and mystery and suspense to it. It's a girl boss satire on toxic positivity and what happens when a bunch of super overly positive, obsessive women witness a murder, how it throws their whole world and their view on how things should be into a tizzy. So that's going to festivals and stuff right now.
Oh, congrats. I had no idea.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm happy to send you guys a private link to it. You can watch it on your own time, and then eventually it'll be available
It's wonderful.
online.
It's very funny. And
thank you.
And I can't wait for everyone else to see it as well.
Same. Thank you. Yes, I'm ready for lots of people to see it. Oh, can I say one more thing? Sorry, I know I'm bullying the jukebox here. Yeah. I am also the festival director and programmer for a brand new film festival here in Los Angeles through the Pack Theater, which is one of the comedy theaters that I work at.
Yeah.
And it is our very first comedy festival that we're doing, and there's this whole film element to it. So all comedy films, but we can do horror comedies and action comedies, genre comedies, dark what the fuck, midnight stuff, John Waters-y type stuff. And I'm really excited. Submissions just opened, and the early bird deadline is coming up on March 31st, but we have deadlines all the way through June. So if you guys know anybody or anyone out there listening is a filmmaker, has a short film under 30 minutes, please submit to the PAC Film Festival. It's on Film Freeway, and I'm happy to send you information as well. You guys can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at LTB Comedy, and the podcast at It's Always Halloween Podcast.
Boom.
All right, thanks so much. Yes, and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
Jane. I had to do it. I had to, Jane. They were only dolls. Stupid dolls made out of flesh and blood.